Okay, so I recorded a 15-minute or so video about why Fogo is not an L2. This started as a thread I posted and decided to just make a recording instead of continuing the thread. And anybody that follows me knows that like I respect what L2s are doing. They care about a lot of the same things I care about in terms of latency and UX. And I get why, like, if you're committed to Ethereum, that's the route you go down to create a similar experience we're trying to create. So I don't want to get grouped into the anti L2 SVM voices. Like, I don't think that L2s are all wrong or and have no chance or are illegal or whatever. That's not me. And so, yeah, hopefully you enjoy the video. Welcome to the first solo episode ever. So I want to talk about why Fogo is not an L2. I made a post about it and said I was going to write more, but then I decided just to put a video out because it's much easier to record than type a bunch of threads. Yeah, I hope this won't trigger any L2s. The idea is just to kind of give you the background. Maybe you could be a little more sympathetic towards L1s. I also don't want to get grouped into the SVM anti-L2 crowd. I do think they are very well intentioned. They have merit. They care about a lot of the things I care about in terms of latency and UX. But I want to go through, why it doesn't work for me. And an L1 was a better choice. So let me start with this. I think just forget about crypto for a minute. Just zooming out. The idea of execution and settlement happening in different places at different times is just something that I hate. And like in TradFi, the reason it exists is because it always took time to move whatever money from banks, titles of securities like physical paper, obviously commodities, physical commodities. And so traders didn't want to be slowed down by the movement of settlement. So they separate out execution, which is super efficient. And you could confirm prices, get price discovery on this execution layer, and then you could net settle in 2 days. So it made sense just because of the lag of settlement. But in today's world with technology and hopefully with blockchains, like there's no reason that that should be separate. Like once you agree the price, as long as you have the money, which you should, then you should be able to settle immediately. So there's an overriding kind of philosophy there that I just think that if blockchains can enable that reduction of that friction between execution and settlement, that is like something that excites me. Yeah, and I used to work in FX prime brokerage, and I often thought that there could be technology that could exist that would essentially put us out of business, because like what FX prime brokerage did was for traders that wanted to trade different currencies, but there was, like it took time for currencies to settle. Like they didn't want to have to wait for settlement. And so instead of like putting on a position on the Japanese yen and then waiting a day for it to settle so you can take that capital and put on another position, prime brokers would step in and like give credit, extend credit to everybody, and act as kind of a central counterparty and just allow people to trade away and not worry about settlement. And then we'd kind of net settle, on a collateral basis at some point. But if there was technology that existed that meant there was no delay and those counterparties can trade with each other with instant settlement, like there would be kind of no need for prime brokerage. And maybe that's why, blockchains and crypto attracted me, because I always knew that this kind of intermediary and this inefficiency was just kind of stupid. And eventually it would be disrupted. So those are some kind of overriding disclaimers, I guess, before I get into it. Maybe one more. I come from a trading background. I see that these trading firms are kind of what makes the world go round in terms of volumes. And I understand that world. I know what's important to them, how they think, how they can sometimes be unreasonable in how they think and who they trust. and that weighed heavily into this decision to be an L1. And I'll get more into those details. So let's get into it. First one. So the first one's pretty simple, which is just an L1 is like one thing. And so, there's one thing. Like you can both execute and settle immediately on this one thing. I don't have to tell you about an L2 or multiple L2s and like Ethereum separately and the different trust assumptions that you have with each of those. And that's attractive to me. Like I love simplicity. I'm a minimalist. So if somebody shows me that like I can go on just one platform and do one thing, and we're gonna get into, the fact that there's gonna be multiple L1s and there's bridges and like we get that. But yeah, that is a big factor. And that's kind of where I started. Like I don't want to have to consider two things. And especially if that second thing is really out of kind of our control and we're just at the whims of however Ethereum develops. Not that L1s are in our control, but you have more influence over how it develops in terms of the decentralized team and the community of validators, etc., than this kind of L1. And that's obviously a feature of Ethereum. But yeah, one thing that's number one. Number two, capital efficiency. So as I said, being able to execute and immediately settle is key. And fast finality on an L1 allows that. And also, since bridges depend on finality of the slowest chain, I think the way it's going to work out is that traders will look at the chains with the fastest finality and point their models and their liquidity there. Because you can envision that, like if you think about high frequency trading, everybody thinks about the amount of actual trades being done. But in a very efficient world that's very automated, you can also envision almost a similar amount of automated transfers of capital being done. Because like these traders are going to be on multiple venues. They're going to be trading. They're going to need to move capital elsewhere to deploy it to post as margin. And the faster they can do that, just the more capital efficient they are, which goes back to like not needing like credit because they can trade, settle, move that capital off platform, have fast settlement because of fast finality, and then they're deploying that capital and putting it to work again. So that's the second thing. It's fast finality. Okay, the third thing I'll maybe ask as a question. This is something I heard from Doug Colkett, and I haven't heard a response. So Doug has said, like I think on podcasts before, so I'm not throwing him under the bus or putting out anything he hasn't said, putting words into his mouth. But he has said that with L2s, you're trusting the sequencer to order your orders. And there's a 15-minute window, which effectively is like a last look. And as I said, I've not gotten into the details in this, but when Doug says something, given his experience as a trader and on L2s, you can guarantee that he's thought about it and it's pretty accurate. And I haven't heard a response to it. But the implication of that is that it's effectively if the market moves and you have an opportunity to reorder orders, you can effectively steal somebody's funds against like the current market rate. Yeah, I'd like to hear a response, but that's not something that if there is an opportunity for that to be done, it's not something I'd like to sit in front of a trader and have to explain. Because like all of these traders, as much as they might not know tons about crypto, they do know about SPF, and they don't want to trust some crypto guy with their orders. And that's not to say that L1 doesn't have a lot of issues with sandwich attacks, etc. It's something like I'll be self-critical on that. It's something we're working on. Like we need to fix that. We are, but that is an issue. So maybe somebody can respond to me there if there is a solution and of how that gets mitigated. The other thing is just the single sequencer brand is an issue, and maybe it kind of goes back to my last point, but right now, traders are kind of at the mercy of these centralized monopolies that run these TradFi exchanges, and they don't like it. Not necessarily because of capital protection, because there are a lot of um, protections in there. There's, these companies are maybe too big to fail, but these monopolies do wield their power over traders. And if there's like no competition, like what do you do, right? You're just kind of at their mercy. And so, from being at these trading shops, like it's very clear that they're hungry for solutions that aren't under the control of like one person, entity, whatever. And that was always attractive to me as an L1 to know that there's whatever X number of independent validators that are running the network that aren't under common control, where the worst case scenario in a collusion, and like I'm sure somebody's going to chime in here, is the liveness failure. That was always very attractive to me. And I think that will resonate more with traders than anything with the word single in it. So, and then look, there's just other things I think that come up that I think L2s are going to struggle to explain. So one of those is forced inclusion, which I've heard about, and every time I ask if like show me how it's ever been used, um, I don't get a great answer. Once again, maybe somebody can give a data point. I'm very open to including that. The other thing is the L2 Beat website. So the no major L2 has reached stage 2. And just as an outsider looking in, you look at that and you conclude whether it's reasonable or not, that okay, like it's impossible. If nobody has done it and everybody agrees it's important, then it's impossible, because likely if they do it, like maybe their UX or their latency goes up, whatever, something happens, and they don't want to do it. So it that's like one more kind of sore spot that would come up as an L2. And look, maybe in a month, like a bunch of L2s get there, and there's no hit on any of those things, and it doesn't matter. And then that's a better data point. But those are like two other things that I could never really get comfortable with. So yeah, so that is why we are personally not an L2. We're going down the L1 route. It's a lot of where I come from, who my audience is, and thinking through that conversation of what's going to resonate in terms of the characteristics of this solution, which I hope is better than the status quo of what they're used to in TradFi in terms of trust assumptions and in terms of different layers of execution and settlement. But who knows? Like these are all our best guesses, and we're all building kind of what we think makes most sense. And so yeah, all the L2s, I wish you luck. Like you're going to be fighting for your model and what you think is right. And the L1s are also going to be like fighting for the reasons that we chose to be L1s. And if we can do it respectfully and lay out all the facts in an intellectually honest way and let users decide, I think we're going to be better as an industry. So thank you very much.